welcome into the first episode of Casting with the Coaches. Coach Evan Ferguson, James Collier, happy to have you along with us here, Coach. I see we thought about this for a long time of putting this show together, and we start our first episode here, and look at us, both of us with Christmas trees. I mean, you can't ask for a better background.
Yeah, you can tell it's that time of year when we actually have time to do it too.
Yeah,
Getting stuff started up, but no, like you said, we actually since we started ever doing just radio shows with football the last couple of years, you said we need to do this, and we talked about it, and we both thought it was a great idea, and just never kind of taken the initiative, and we said we're going to do it now. So here we are, first episode. We'll see how this thing goes, and we'll just have some fun talking about fishing, something that we're both passionate about and like to talk about, and should be a good time. I still get plenty of kicks. I mean, guys give me a hard time. The other coaches that, and stuff that listen into the show back whenever you called me to the talk show when I was on Summersville fishing that tournament a couple of weeks ago.
that was awesome.
Like, why are you doing fishing the morning after? And, got to wake up and go, or not sleep basically and go.
Well, I was going to say, sometimes, you just have to take what time's available, and not always is that a perfect timing, but sometimes you just got to go with what you can. So,
yeah, for sure.
I remember, speaking of football season, I had a tournament I used to help with down on Del Hollow, and it always fell in that last Friday, Saturday of October, and then they moved it into the first part of November. So it was always a hard time for me to get away, but I wanted to go down. I hadn't been down in several years. So I covered Boyd County at Shelby Valley was that game. I left Shelby Valley, drove to Del Hollow in an absolute monsoon of a rain. I think I pulled in at the ramp at like 2:30. My buddy came over from the island, picked me up. It was, we had the ugly there from the Trooper Island camp. We drove over, got up the next morning, went and fished, did the tournament. And then by the time it was time to sit down and have a good time with my buddies, I'm like, can I just go to bed? I've not been in bed in like 48 hours.
I hear you on that for sure. That makes for a long night, and you think you enjoy it. And then, if you're not catching anything, or sometimes it's like, but we love it. That's why we do it.
Well, also, this show is going to be brought to you apart by the great folks out at Border Sporting Goods, US 60 in Canonsburg. They've got everything you need out there to get yourself ready to go. And again, this is the time of year, Coach, that, for us, this is going to be kind of an informative type of show. We're going to talk a lot of different techniques throughout the winter months, because we all know that when you get into this time, right, this is not usually your better time to go fishing unless you start making trips down to Dale or Cumberland, which can be very productive this time of year. But starting to get that stuff ready to go when that springtime bite comes around, and it'll be here before we know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much, how desperate people are going to be just to listen to us to get informed about fishing, but hopefully we can provide some information here and there. I think we do okay here enough to make fishing fun for us for sure. But no, like you said, this time of year, while it may not be the premier fishing time for a lot of people, for guys like me especially, I actually have time to go. So that might be the best time to go. A lot of guys who work a lot, anytime they can go fishing is the best time. So I really enjoyed getting out there the winter time, and you get the lake to yourself. And as long as there's not too hard of water, we'll go out there and get it after.
The one thing I enjoy about going out in the wintertime, especially on lakes that you fish normally through the season, is when you get to go out in the drawdown and you can see what all of that structure is and that cover that's in the water, and you can make some mental notes of where some of that thing is. There was a spot that I fish at Grayson that I didn't realize there was a really deep grass bed that was literally in the middle of the lake. And sometimes it's freaking dangerous to be on that lake as it is, but it's really dangerous sometimes to try to fish this spot. But it always holds fish because it's right on a channel break.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good point. Just bringing up, like, it's especially in our area. If you're not, I don't know where you're tuning in at, but if you're from this local West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, tri-state area, you know these lakes around here, and they are not really marked well like most lakes for wintertime full speed running. So definitely take it easy if you're going out there and just going to say you're going to trap for the first time. I used to work at Beach Fork, and I don't know how many people tore their lower units off the roadbed there at Rubens Branch and stuff, just because nothing's marked, and you're going across a lake that you think is going to be 10, 12 feet deep, and it's not at all. So it's a really make sure you're watching what you're doing, but you can also find some sweet spots. So you're right for sure.
This is a good time of year too, if you can get out onto the water, get in some of those areas that maybe you want to get into and go fish in the summertime areas once the water fills up. But you can take your time, go out idle, make yourself a little paper trail on your graph of whatever GPS unit that you have on your boat that you can save and then go back to it when you know there's an additional 4, 5, 6 feet of water underneath you and you know where you can run.
Yeah, I don't know. That might be a good way to get to Irish Creek if you get up there at Yatesville. It's kind of gotten too silted in these days to kind of get over that first hump. But yeah, there's a time that was the best way I learned to get up there was now.
Now, running Rich Creek is one of the places I used to fish a lot at Yatesville. And I remember one year we were up there. I was fishing a KBF event, and the lake was down. It was in March, and we were on a practice day on Saturday. It was when we fished on Sundays, and there was a guy trying to figure out how to get up there. And that was when, if you didn't know where the channel was, the channel buoys were not where they were for wintertime. They were there for summertime. And this fool beached his boat twice, just trying to get up into Rich Creek. And we hadn't even made it near the bridge yet. So I told my buddy, I said, let's get out of here because I'm not going and getting and having to pull this fool out of here. I said, he's going to get stuck or tear his lower unit off of his boat. And by the time we get there where the bend goes back right there at 32, he's over on where those stump beds are and he's blowing mud all over the place. So I don't know if he ever got out of there or not, but it's something you got to know where these things are.
Yeah, actually, last year in the spring tournament coming out before the lake came up out there, I felt bad. There was an older man by himself fishing, and he was out waiting, stuck that little hump before you get those little coves on the right before you get to that curve you're talking about. And I just felt bad. Looked at my buddy. I was like, Nate, we got to go get him, don't we? And he's like,
yeah.
So
You feel obligated at that point.
Yeah, I was had to go get out in the waters. Actually, first time I've had to go out there and get somebody. I was like, I've been lucky not having to get out and push. I've been good enough not to get stuck so far, and lucky enough. And well, I finally broke my streak of not having to get out and push somebody or myself, and I had to help somebody out. But luckily, he got out and he actually won lunker that day. I didn't get anything out of it, but that guy won lunker that day, so it all worked out for him.
All worked out good. Let's talk about this time of year, Coach. And it's something that when you get out, and I'm going to steal this little thunder right here from Gerald Swindle because it happened to pop up on my phone actually yesterday, and it was talking about wintertime fishing. And he said that this is the time when you really want to take crankbaits that have a very tight wobble, and you're trying to imitate a minnow that is just basically just quivering, kind of like setting like that in the water. And he said, if you think about this, take a bowl and put a goldfish in it, take it inside your house, and let it sit there all night. Get up the next morning, walk over and hit the bowl, and the goldfish goes nuts. He said, then take it outside and set it on your deck in 30 degrees, and get up the next morning and it's 35 degrees in that bowl, and go over and hit that thing. And he said that goldfish doesn't take off real quick. He said it's real tiny movements and stuff. And he said that's what you're trying to imitate this time of year. Minnows that are really lethargic, something that is not moving very fast. You've got to really entice that fish that it wants to eat.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great analogy he used, and that's why he's a pro. But I think you break down wintertime fishing, like you said, you can really break it down for different areas so much. If we're talking about the traditional flat sided crankbait, that to get that tight wobble and trying to get, like you see a lot of the guys do on TV all the time, it definitely has success. And actually, my dog just went crazy, and I'm going to try.
No, it's all good.
We're gonna cut Rich. Everybody, all right, we're back. He kind of trains. Got my train of thought a little off track here. He's just got to fix that. So if we're back where we're at, talking about a tight wobble, I definitely, I think the key along with that, in my opinion, is just the bait fish. I mean, you talk. A lot of people like a jig for cold weather, and I think as it's cooling, you see, especially when the water gets drawn down, you get I don't want to change topics here, but like you get I always see, especially I used to work at the marina at Beach Fork, and you'd see as the water come down, all that water, the sand and the old mud and silt gets exposed, and you would see crawdads just crawling everywhere. And you're like, okay. And I used to think, well, wintertime fishing, you got to get out deep and got to do something. But you get a sunny day this time of year, kind of early December, late November around here, And a lot of those fish they slide it up or in some cover and just decide to feed on them crawdads. And that's just another way of looking at it. But I think especially you get to those clear water lakes and a lake where they actually can sight feed a little bit more. It's definitely all about the bait fish and what they're doing. And they do get out there in that deep water and they're just shimmering like you talk about. And that's why beyond that, I feel like this bait right here has kind of became with live forward facing sonar, the Demiki rig especially has became a big player in today's world.
Well, the Demiki rig, we'll go right to that first off. It's a rig that I started throwing this year. I started throwing it back in the spring. For people that may not know what a Demiki rig is, so it's just basically simply it has a lead head, but the key to it is at the very top there. It makes a 90-degree angle from where that tie-in is going back to the shank of the hook, and that's very key because when you drop this thing, it does a vertical drop. You don't want it kind of wigging back and forth. You want that vertical drop that you can drop right into that fish.
Yeah, this is actually the Yum version of their forward facing one that Christie designed. It's basically 90, but it's actually got a little bit, just a touch. Maybe they don't, but it just looks like it's always slightly forward. Maybe I'm just eyeballing it wrong. I don't know if that matters or not on because trying to use a live scope out there too. That's just, but you're right. The Demiki rig, especially in East Tennessee and these lakes in Kentucky, it was famous for that 90-degree line tie. Jesse Wiggins brought it to the light at Cherokee a few years ago with that tournament. He was doing so well on that Wheeler ended up winning. But that 90-degree line tie is with that Demiki rig is special.
What is it about that? And with you doing that, it's something about when you get around a ball of bait and you find fish that's running with it, you can take that bait and you don't have to be in shallow water. You can be out in 50, 60 feet of water and find a pile of bait with fish around it. And you can make long casts. And I think that's the key when you're fishing the Demiki rig, those long casts. Don't get up on the bait ball and blow them away.
Yeah, and that's been the biggest thing with the forward facing sonar, live scope, active target, and all the different and Hummingbird's live imaging too. It's been a big deal just to sit back. You find those schools of bait. Traditionally, this time of year they're going to the deepest hole in the lake, and those big schools of shad are going to naturally the bass are going to follow them and everything else. So you just get to see massive schools of fish, and you can a lot of times sit in one spot and have a lot of success that way. Actually, one thing I read, and it doesn't have to be over a channel; it can be over a deep flat even. Something I read in Bassmaster years ago that's been really a big thing that I've learned is I forgot who was actually writing the article, so I'm sorry I'm not giving you credit to whoever you were. It was a guy in Texas, but he talked about he idled these lakes and would go over these big timber flats, typical Texas, like you imagine, and he found these just holes that was loaded, and he said there was just a few of them that was great, but he goes once he found them that first year, it doesn't matter what year he's been since then. They've always been the same loaded areas every single year. It's like they just always are going to congregate, whether due to wind and current or just the certain run of whatever it happens to be that makes that spot special. You can find them, and they tend to produce. I mean, the biggest fish in the lake. I mean, the most fish in the lake are going to go where the most bait is. A lot of times, they're going to all congregate in those same areas, and whether it be the mouth of a creek, mouth of several creeks, a big channel swing. Those areas do load up, and I've kind of started to. I'm definitely not as experienced as a lot of those guys, but I've seen that a lot around here in these areas, and some places even going, traveling to the Cumberland, traveling, different areas. These same areas seem to have that thing holding true. There's one hole I know at Beach Fork Lake. I talk about that a lot because I grew up fishing out there. You can go this time of year and sit on one spot. You might not catch big ones, but like in an hour, I caught like 30 some one day, just on the same hole, just throwing the same cast over and over and over again. And they just stack up under it's one of the deepest holes in the lake. And they've been there every time I've been there recently. So it's pretty cool to find stuff like that. And it just makes it for a fun day catching.
Another bait that really is a good one to go to this time of year, and this is more, I think, if you get into your deeper lakes. I know you've got one of them there in handy, but if anybody has used this, they know how deadly this bait can be, especially when you take it to Dale Hollow with the good old silver buddy.
Yeah, this is actually a gold one, so it's a gold buddy, I guess you'd say. But
Yeah, a gold buddy, but
yeah,
I
Yeah,
mean,
this is
the great part about them is that they're so simple to use. Throw them out, rip them, let them fall on slack line. Some people prefer to fish it on braid. Some people fish it on fluoro. I like mine on braid because, especially if I'm fishing deep, if it gets hung up, I can just rip it out. You may be in the hook or whatever, but you don't lose your bait. The other part is too, is especially when you get those big sow mouth, smallmouths, you can really horse them right back with those as well.
yeah, they're it's just it don't look like much. If you have ever thrown one, I remember one of the guys, Brian Smith, one of the guys taking me, got me in a tournament fishing a lot. He had lead on his boat one time. I was like, "What is that thing?" He goes, "That's gonna be the thing that's gonna make the most vibration you've ever had than any of your rod in your life." I went, "No way!" I didn't make sense to me, but just that little flat chunk of metal has caught a lot of fish. And the silver buddy is what's made it famous. It's a silver one. This is a gold one. Just throwing it out there. Gold might work too, just in case you might was ever curious. But you're right. You do get hung a lot. I don't actually throw it on braid. That's a great idea to consider doing so you're not losing them. Before tackle box, I got a lot of them over there because he handmade a bunch of them, and it was a very efficient way to get a bunch of them stocked up on. But they they're a really unique bait, and it's something about them once the water's below about 45 in my book. That's to me when it starts to shine a lot. It can be pretty special. I'm just Mr. Mono with like everything, so I guess I'm just old school, and I know it's not the technical thing, but most stuff I'm doing is I'm too cheap to put anything other than mono on there, and it works like a charm.
Well, and there are times when a mono setup will outfish a fluoro setup, will outfish a braid, and then vice versa all the way through. It really depends on your conditions, what you're trying to do with the bait. And I remember the year that Chris Malone won the All American down at Cumberland. He was throwing that little underspin, but he was throwing it on fluoro so that when he did the
Tailspin.
break or the tailspin, excuse me, when he threw it, it was so that he didn't rip it away from those banks, so he got that kind of that vertical fall with it, and that was key in getting his bites.
Yeah, there's sometimes you use different types for sure. I personally just found that just keeping it consistent for one thing has been best for me. So whatever works for other people works the best. But there's definitely times whenever you can change, like you said, for a reason with the different fall rates is the biggest thing I like to look at on it.
What do you talk? We talk about a dragging a jig. How big is that this time of year? Like you said, you can see those crawdads in those areas where they're usually covered up with water. How big is it this time of year being able to drag a jig?
I mean, I think it's huge. I mean, you look at, especially, I think it's great until they really move out underneath those schools of shad, like we were talking about. I think, the jig is pretty killer. I mean, it's caught a lot of, it's been one of the number one big fish baits in the country for years and years, and it's not going to stop. So, there's definitely something about the old fashioned jig that will never continue to never cease to be great. So I think, it's a pretty special bait on that side of things, and it's versatile. Because you can fish it in any water column there, and you can get it, you can drag it, you can flip it up shallow. I'm personally going to flip it up shallow. I can't drag a jig out deep. It's if you know me, I'm going to be miserable doing it, and I'm not going to try to act like I like it. I hate it, so I'm not going to do it. But if I get to flip it against a little stump in about 2 foot of water, I'll be happy with it then.
There's a lot of people that know me and the way that I fish, and there for the longest time, people would make fun of me. They would say if I was in more than 8 feet of water, I was probably getting nosebleeds. I was just so uncomfortable and out of my element. And it didn't matter if water temperature was 42 degrees or it was 97 degrees. I'm looking for shallow water, cover, something I can pitch to, throw to, bang something off of. That's where I'm trying to go for. And I'm the same way with you. Is like if you get a couple of warm days in December, find you a rock line, find that bank that gets beat down with that sunlight early on, and get in there tight. You're going to find some fish.
Yeah, and like you said, at this time of year too, when they do move up, especially at lakes where it's not ultra deep, and most of these lakes in our close area here within about an hour, they're not super deep, and it really lets them just slide up in the dirt, and it can be really fun.
Well, let's kind of wrap up our first show here with what we've got of kind of what we're wanting to do with this. So obviously, the biggest thing here, we got to build an audience that we've got to get people to watch this thing and interact with us in there. So the biggest thing is that if you're watching and you have some questions or some things that you would like to see us talk about throughout this show, put a comment in there and let us know. And that's what we'll build as we go through. But as we keep moving forward, the goal is eventually when we get a chance, we're going to get on the water. We're going to take some cameras with us. We're going to get some footage.
Yeah, that's what make it fun. I'm going to try to have a lot of cameras rolling this year and make it enjoyable.
So let's look at what we've got. So we've got December, January, February, and for a lot of people, that's the way. Else away. Let's restock. Let's make the trips to the bait stores. Let's get everything ready to go. And then March rolls around. But there's some lakes within this area, and we've talked about two of them at length, Dale Hollow and Cumberland. Sometimes that's some of the best fishing that you can run into in those 3 months right there.
It's the best time you can go to those lakes. I mean, I do think that all the way through probably April is pretty special there as well. But I mean, this time of year, if you really want to catch giant smallmouth, you're not going to find better lakes really anywhere. And a little bit further in eastern Tennessee is pretty good too. But it's Cumberland. I love the place. You know, the kind of diversity of smallmouth with largemouth, and you get some nice spots here and there too. Makes it really fun. And I plan on spending a lot of my winter down there. So I'm looking forward to getting down there and catching some fish. And it's really unique because some days you'll see the tournament come in with, close to 18 pound of smallmouth winning. And the next day it's sunny and the smallmouth are going to sit there and not do anything. And you better go chasing largemouth. And the guys that fish in the dirt all day, they come in with a big bag of largemouth. And it seems like you got to find a way to do both if you're going to be competitive day in and day out down there. And it's such a big lake. They're everywhere. You got to find a way to narrow them down.
When you have a day like what you're talking about and you come to the scales and you've had a really tough day and you look over and a guy's pulling his boat out and it's got a mud line down the side of it, that guy's probably got a bag of fish.
Yeah, it's usually a good day for that guy. I like the old mud lines. So
mud lines are usually a good thing. So, well, one thing we've definitely got to do, we got to get together while we're on, because we're getting ready, both of us getting ready to go into our Christmas break time. And for me, that's also going to be a break for some basketball coverage too. So we've got to get together and get on the water a couple of times and see if we can find some fish while we're out there. Maybe we can add to that for the show early on.
Yeah, that'd be good. I try to send you today a couple, an old shot I had from about 7, 8 years ago of an old clip with actually this exact silver bite is why I brought it out. And then, definitely try to get some more clips and just keep doing it all year to maybe have some cool shots to go along with it. So just looking at us two goofballs here trying to talk to you the whole time.
Yeah, so that's where we're going with this. So, yeah, it's not just going to be us sitting here talking, but in the wintertime when it does get ugly, you got to do some talking, and this is a great way to do it. So, but we will be having some interaction throughout the program as we move forward too. And the one thing that we are going to be adding to as well, we have some giveaways on this program as well. So, talking with Brad out at Borders, he's going to hook us up with some stuff that we'll be able to do. I know we're both going to hit our contacts that we've got through our sponsorships and so forth, and try to get some good stuff that we can do, some discounts, some grab and goes and stuff. So we'll have some giveaways throughout there that'll definitely make it worth the while for the folks to tune in for sure.
Makes it better for everybody. Free stuff.
Absolutely. Free stuff is always good stuff, especially in the world of fishing. So, all right, Evan, we finally put it together. It's always been a conversation. Now it's a reality. So episode 1 is in the books, and hopefully this is to many more to come and a great venture through the world of fishing.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll improve it a lot as it goes. And we had to start somewhere. So we started here today, and the next day will only get better from here. So thanks for tuning in, guys. And like I said, hopefully if you want something you want to see, or the biggest thing is whenever we get viewer feedback, it's going to be the biggest key to making sure you're enjoying the show. We're going to try to be ourselves. We're not going to be somebody we ain't. And we're going to make sure it's not going to be a bashing forward-facing sonar battle online like you see with some of the guys doing, and we're not going to be taking up for it or bashing. We're just going to be ourselves, and we're going to talk about fishing and hopefully everybody can enjoy it.
Absolutely. And of course, that's going to be a conversation that's going to happen sometime through this wintertime is we're going to have to talk about some forward facing sonar, some differences, some opinions and stuff. But again, we've got so many topics that we'll dip into as we go through the show. Evan, enjoy the week, my friend. We'll hook up later in the week for episode number 2, and we'll be ready to hit the water pretty soon as well.
Sounds good. I'll see you, man.
Guys, that's it for episode 1 here on Casting with the Coaches. For Evan Ferguson, I'm James Collier. Tune in next week right here on Casting with the Coaches by Border Sporting Goods.